So I've gotten this several times now, which makes me want to create a video about this, and it's not really a bad concern. In fact, it's a pretty legitimate concern. It's the fact that it's a process to get to a free world, a truly voluntary free world, as I talk about, one that does not have legitimized violence, i.e. statism. Now, if you truly understand this belief system, all the justifications are out the door. It's just as one who understands the nature of slavery. All the justifications are out the door. But if you don't understand slavery, and you are currently enslaved, or there is slavery and it's everywhere to be seen, you're going to more likely fall to many different justifications, even on your process of getting rid of that mindset in yourself. It is a natural process on its own for you to have these questions. And I had these questions. Other people have these questions too. It is a question to assume something because you have to question your own assumptions, your own thoughts. Are they true or are they not? This is how you improve your thoughts. This is how you attain new thoughts. So everything in this life is a process. So by saying, oh, well, it's a process to get to freedom, it's sort of redundant. What does it actually do to say that? Because everything we do in our life requires time, and everything changes throughout time. We know this. The abolitionists knew when they said we should end slavery now, that it still would take time. So although they were called immediatists versus the gradualists who wanted to end slavery like in gradual processes, making the better and then having transitions like, oh, they just go to a better plantation, we give them housing, we give them clothes. The immediatist says, well, it's still slavery. So if we end it now, that's good. But they know that when they say end it now, it doesn't mean actually now. So what do they mean? If you don't understand what the immediatist abolitionists from the 1800s meant, you're not going to understand what I mean. Because they have the same exact message as me. Let's end slavery. It's wrong, so end it now. But when I say that, it's a sense of urgency. It's not saying, oh, it's going to happen immediately, or we can just get rid of government immediately. No, but it can happen overnight, and it can happen rather quickly because of the sense of urgency in people and the sense of change in people. And change can happen rather quickly. Yes, it's a process, but that process does not need to be long. And that process does not need to involve whatever rituals you think need to be within that are still reinforcing statism or the problem. Because there are clear problems, and those problems are clear blockades to solutions. Just as it's either you own yourself or you don't. There is not a middle ground and in between. You're in a relationship or you're not. You're sitting in this chair or you're not, right? Now, you can say, well, my feet are on the floor and not my whole body's on the chair. And you can go into all these details, but keeping things very simple, you can keep things very grounded, unified, and in the direction. If you can make things complex and say, well, it's a process, we have to do this, we have to do that. Are you really expecting to get from point A to point B? It has to be clear. It has to be concise. Now, you might say it's a process because you can't just go from point A to point B. There needs to be this in-between. But that in-between then has to support point B. Otherwise, you can't get to point B. So if you're saying, for instance, I'll give an example. And you can see this as well in the recording of the event we did, where we talked about some of these solutions. I did a presentation called Freedom by the Roots. Somebody said, well, why not use paperwork to achieve our freedom? I said, that's beating around the bush, because why not just say you're free? Why not just say no? They said, well, we can't get there yet. That's too scary, essentially. Like people are not ready for that. You think people are ready for paperwork and for what you have to share? No. So you're saying mine is more fearful, even though there's less steps involved, even though it's direct and honest. People have to be less honest in order to attain more honesty. This doesn't make any sense. See, you say, well, okay, people have to be more honest to be the most honest, right? Well, here's the deal. Are you talking about statism? Are you talking about the root cause? Because a lot of the people on the paperwork side of things completely goes over their heads. They want to create a whole new system. They see their system as the ideal picture to put humanity under, and everybody's got a vision of what they should do to humanity and how to rule the world and what to put in the world. And, they're all imposing their will, and I'm not saying for us to have any plan or really major structure to this. It's just saying stand up for yourself, stand up for who you've always been. So is it a process to simply stand on what you naturally are? Or is it just a major awakening and enlightenment past all the blockades of control? So it's like an ultra simplicity that you are reaching in an ultra simplistic way, literally just saying no, the lost word, as Mark Passio calls it. And so if it's literally just saying no, and we're comparing that to the step of you need to learn how to sign your signature a certain way and say certain things so you can beat around the bush of a system and mostly only free yourself, that's not going to really change the world. But when the majority of people say no to something and all the masses put few people in power, those people in power don't have power anymore. It's really simple. And does that require teaching people a new language, teaching people how to fill out paperwork, teaching people more processes, part of the process, you think, toward achieving me just saying that people have to just say no? I think that's absurd, right? People also, I talk about building food forests, I talk about different projects, and people say, what about this? What about that? That's a process because it takes time, to get to that point, right? But do I ever talk about it in the sense of, oh, well, it's a process and it needs to take time, you got to give it time? No, I say do what you can now and always do what you can. It doesn't matter. There are no limits. We can change the world very quickly because we have technology and the internet. We've never had that before in history. So things can change very rapidly in ways that you don't even expect and you definitely cannot plan. Okay, so people assuming they know what they know or what's going to happen, it's very nearsighted in my opinion, and it's very assumptuous, and it's limited, meaning it's ignorant. And ignorant not in a negative connotation. It's just recognizing you don't see or know everything, and I don't claim to do that either. I want to simply see who we are. And it sounds really difficult to some, which is why they say it's a process of getting there, and that process requires all these complexities. But I'm saying it's just going to make it more complex and turn it into its own process, and it's actually going to steer it away. Because the only process is really just your own introspection, your own shadow work, your own psychology. Okay, and yeah, that can take years. It can take people upwards 20, 30 years of recognizing who they are. But you know what? They'll be working on that directly rather than being steered away. Which is the thing I fear, is getting people more divided and more clouded among what real work has to be done is with themselves. And everybody who talks about common law and paperwork will recognize that. So what is going on here? They recognize it's about God's law. They recognize it's about nature. They recognize it's about freedom. But yet they are the ones to say, hey, we need to learn this new man-made system or this old man-made system or this view of a man-made system with all these man-made rituals, and it just gets more complicated again. And Lao Tzu said this too in many different ways, from the writer of the Tao Te Ching from ancient times, talking about how the more complicated you make things, the more clever you make men, the more chaos there will actually be. And it's like a weird irony. It's like, wait, what do you mean? We're educating people, we're making them intelligent by giving them all this information. Are we really? Because I do think there's a lot of shadow work and individual work that we tend to count out. We say that's not as important as my research, as this knowledge. But there's something way beyond knowledge, which is our psyche, which is our emotions, which is controlling our own body. There's just so much more to that. This is why if you change the hearts of people, you change the minds naturally. And to inspire and empower, that's how you reach the youth. You're not going to reach the youth by sharing paperwork. It's just the truth. It's a really brutal one. But it's true. All these ideas, watch this documentary and you need to know this and look at all these files and the classified documents. The average young person's not going to look into this, and do you blame them? They want to have fun. They want to enjoy life. And they are looking for a purpose, a higher meaning in their life. They're only going to fall down that rabbit hole if something really prompts them to do so. So I fell into that rabbit hole because something really prompted me to do so. I asked a lot of questions. I journaled. I started meeting people, and I would fall down certain rabbit holes from there. But that took some time. That was a process of its own. My process was reading ingredients, and then realizing there's greater truth, there's greater truth. If you find a greater truth, you stick to it because it's the truth. I didn't say, well, there's this greater truth I see, but I'm not ready for that. It's like if you see you can heal, you're ready for healing. Do not say you're not ready for healing. Say to yourself you are. Give yourself faith and courage. What's the whole point of faith and courage or bravery if you're just going to push yourself down and say, well, I'll get there eventually. It's a process, and we're just going to get there one step at a time. Again, saying it's a process is redundant. It's just to say that, well, we're going to hinder that process because we're afraid of that process, or we feel like we should do something else instead of focusing on that. A lot of people don't want to be educators. They don't want to share about statism, right? But here's the truth. If you want to do something, you set your mind to it, it's very possible. You open the door to possibility and you start seeing it all. When I had to grapple with statism and natural law and all these concepts, it took me a while, right? It takes you a while, but because you are focused on recognizing what is this thing that I'm confused about, you don't distract yourself away from it and try to find the next best thing. You recognize this to be really valuable, so you look into it. You don't escape it. So if I share with you something that is profound and greater, why stick with the great when you have the greater, right? This is just the idea of recognizing there's nature beyond man, right? You wouldn't have done that if you did not see it was greater. So to say it's a process, oh, okay, well, we have to get a process from going from man to nature and harmonizing our actions with it. It's like if you're so worried about the process, you may not actually be undergoing that process. That process you're not to be worried about. It's like looking too much in the future or the past. Stay present, and there is no process. It's just you in the now, and that's it. And so what will come effortlessly on its own in time if you open the door and allow it to come. But many people will make justifications and excuses and therefore close the door to what's possible and therefore hinder the process. So I said this many different ways in this video, and I don't want to repeat myself too many times. I hope you understand what I mean now and why I think it's dangerous to say it's just a process of getting there to freedom, and therefore we cannot look at statism. People are not ready yet. People are ready when they want to be ready. People's minds will change when they want to change, and it really is that simple. If you inspire and educate them enough, if there's enough people sharing it, they will do it. Which is why a lot of extreme measures in history have been imposed on people, and people are like, well, that will never happen. Oh, that's too extreme. And it will happen if there's enough people sharing it, if there's enough propaganda pushing it. That's all you need, is enough people pushing something, and all of a sudden it's there. And so have faith, have courage, and do not abandon what you see to be true, especially more true than anything that's not true or as true. So in summary, coming to recognize statism is a process, but once you know of it, the process is complete. Therefore, to say it will be a process before we get there, after knowing what is there, is redundant and can have setbacks. Everything is a process. It's needless to say. What is needed to be said is that we can help each other know about it. Because a lot of people do not know about what is there, what is possible. And if you want to share what is possible, you can be that example, and it can happen. And so when you don't have these excuses and these justifications, and you know what is there, what is possible, the process will be spontaneous, happening on its own, because you allowed it and gave it the space to manifest. And so also, let's bear in mind, who are we to know where other people are at in their ability to change? The process may not even be so much one, because some people are actively looking for the truth. Some people are ready for what is there. We aren't to say and presume where people are at and say that people are not ready for the type of message that I'm saying, just because you might not be ready. Let us not project, and let us have high faith and courage on this process of truth. Thank you for watching.